Hey, how's it going? Welcome back to CarMiZa, where I am rebuilding Earl Zalsmer's famous red BMW audio system. This will be part 4 of the trunk details. So wanted to start this video out just by showing the decision I've made for the lighting. So initially there was a light behind that fuse block. You can see the hole for it right there. And that gave me that's where the original light was, and it gave me kind of some hot spots and didn't give me an even distribution of lights. So what I've decided to do, and you can bear with me, everything's just temporary, I just double side taped 3 lights up top there. And you can see it really gives me a nice even distribution of the light, the glow. I think everything looks really good there. So I needed to do this to determine if I was going to put a light in the floor, and I've determined that I will not do that. So onward we go. Okay, at this point, I've definitely played around with the lights a little bit more, confirmed. I like 3 up top, maybe even 4. Let me see when it comes time to do the lighting. But again, I just wanted to confirm that I'm not going to drill a hole in the floor behind the fuse box. So that is going to be the case. I've also mocked this up. This round piece here is going to be where that analog voltage gauge, Classic Instruments is the manufacturer, and I've got kind of like a semi-vintage analog voltage gauge coming. It'll be here tomorrow. That goes in that round spot. And I put the fuses in just to get an idea in terms of clearance. I wanted to make sure I could see it at various angles. And then I'm also reserving a spot there. I'm going to have a brass plaque made and engraved, which will say woodworking handcrafted by John D. McNey, my dad. So kind of paying tribute to my father there with that plaque. So now at this point I can pull the rack out, and I think I'm pretty close to being able to transfer this over to the 1/4-inch MDF that I'll send to him. All right, I want to show this too. This is a little delivery I recently received from Straight Wire. So if you recall, Earl used straight wire speaker and RCA connectors and optical cables for the build. So the RCAs for some reason were missing in the car. So these are the Encore 2, which are very similar to the Maestro. And I had them put on a different end. These are what are called RPI ends, really nice and beefy. Cable, despite its diameter, is still quite flexible, so it's able to bend pretty easily. But really nice stuff from Straight Wire. And again, I'm going to be redoing the Maestro speaker cable. I have that, but it requires a bit of a restoration. If you notice on these two, I had them terminate one end, and then I'll run them into the rack and throughout the trunk, and then cut them to the proper length, and then I'll terminate the remaining ends. I've got the ends for that. And I also asked them for, see some solder in there as well, some right angle ends, because the Milberts, again, where these are located, once I put the Sony XES stuff in, the amps, or the Zapco amps, and the 2 C1 changers, everything gets super tight. So I have to do right angle RCAs in the Milbert. So it's also a quick idea what it looks like with those lights in. But again, there's going to be lights all on the back wall here to kind of shine on the Milberts going this way. So where we go. All right, before I pull this out into the 1/4-inch to MDF, I just wanted to show the voltage gauge. You can see that. Really nice piece, and it will light up. I haven't wired it up yet, but kind of an amber glow. I don't have the lights in right now, but it'll kind of match the same hue as what you're seeing with those dichroic lenses. One other thing too, I'd be curious if people's input in the comments below. That black base right here for the fuse block is the original. That's an original Straight Wire's esoteric audio fuse block that Earl put in the car. If you notice, it's got a couple of grooves, top and bottom. There was a plastic cover that went on, and Earl didn't really like the plastic cover, and I don't think it really kind of fits, the look. So I'm going to redo that base, that black piece. I was thinking about making it out of gloss black acrylic, but because I'm no longer doing a light behind that, I'm almost thinking about clear acrylic. I think that might look really cool because you'd be able to see the wires, when they go into these holes from this fuse block, they're going to bend and go through the floor, and you'd be able to see that right through there if that was clear. I think that would look pretty sharp. So let me know if you would in the comments below if you think that would look better, which would look better, either clear or black. Thanks. We'll see you shortly. All right. They are milling a piece of zebra wood now. It will be starting out as a piece of 8/4. And it will be split down the middle to do a perfect flip stack. I'm at Woodworker's Source in Tempe, Arizona. If anybody has any woodworking materials that they're looking for, if you're in this area, these guys are the best around. I went to pretty much every shop I could find, and these guys are definitely the best. All right, getting ready to do the resaw. This is basically going to take the piece and split it down the middle, which is going to give us a perfect match between the two sides. So the piece is a little over, it's close to 5 feet right now, 4.5 feet. So it'll be sliced down the center, and then I will send it out to my father, and he's going to cut those two pieces in half and have 4 pieces that'll kind of make the full bookmark. So you can see here where they are going in and doing this resaw now. Crazy. Evan's got some lubricant All right, I'm back from Woodworker Source. Got the two pieces of zebra wood. This is, I'm not one to like throw numbers around or whatever, but if people are wondering, this is, there are more expensive woods out there for exotic woods, but African zebra wood, those two pieces, which are just under an inch thick and 54 inches long, it was like $350 for those pieces of wood. But again, that Woodworker Source, they let me go through. I probably looked at 25, almost 30 different slabs before I selected this one. I especially like this little thing that's going on here, and you can see that as well. I'm not sure exactly how I'm going to lay out the pieces yet. So basically, as you can see, they're a mirror, almost a perfect mirror image. Here you get some irregularity because of the fact that it's a tree, right, and wood. So it's going to be slightly different there because of where the grain was in the tree relative to where the cut was. But up here, this top part is quite a good match. There's also some cracks at the very top, which is pretty normal. Again, this is much bigger than I need, so my father will cut this down, I'm guessing 3 or 4 inches, and then start from there. But I'm thinking I'll take, let me actually set it up real quick. I'll show you what I'm thinking. Okay, that's a bit better. They're just kind of sitting there and not totally flat against the floor or whatever. But that was kind of my vision for the kind of grain pattern I wanted. Something that kind of looked like a big giant circle. And so again, they'll be a little bit cut off either end. They'll be butted together. This piece, like what you see on screen right there, will be the front piece, meaning the 90-degree rail that I built will be right here. There'll be a millbert here and another millbert here, and very symmetrical. And the other thing I wanted was it to be very, very obvious that it was book matched. I used the term bookmark earlier in the video. It's book matched, where they're basically, the wood is resawn, sliced on the middle, and then split apart. That's kind of what it looks like. Then what I'm going to do is I'll take the ends on either piece and then cut those, and those will serve as kind of the back piece where the capacitor, the two caps are, and the power inverter. So the most important part, again, is kind of that section right there, and I think that just looks really cool. I'm not sure if I'm going to set it up like that or flip it around, you know, so that it's like this. But I got a really cool idea for how I can figure that out. Yeah, like especially that little thing right there. I'd really love to be able to capture that. I just think that looks so cool. One other thing I'm working on. So I keep talking about doing the 1/4-inch piece. This piece, as we know, is all set, and now I'm working on getting ready to cut that 1/4-inch piece, 1/4-inch MDF, which again I will double side tape to this, flush trim router. I've got all my 1/16 of an inch hole, you know, all of those prepped here. But again, some of these holes, I did need to put the T-nuts in because I wanted to mount everything, make sure everything lined up, make sure it looked good and all of that. So there's a bunch of these, like the holes for the millberts, those all have T-nuts. So I needed to figure out a way to be able to find center, especially when there's a piece of 1/4-inch, you know, the actual piece I'm sending my father will be underneath this. Okay, so here's what I came up with. I talked to him, my father, about it. He said this was a good idea and relatively common. I'm sure there might be a more precise way, maybe, but here's what I did. Went out and got some socket head screws, put them in the drill press, used a grinder at an angle, and put a point on them, and the point is dead center. So I know that that is center. Then I basically, imagine the 1/4-inch is already attached. I put this in, I screw this in until it bottoms out, and then I take the Allen wrench and just kind of go maybe a half turn. That'll put a little dimple right in the center of where this hole needs to be. Then once I do that for all of the pieces, I'll take the two pieces apart and then bring the 1/4-inch to the drill press and then continue these holes now that they'll be marked. So that's the plan. Let's see how it goes, and I'll catch up here shortly. At this point, you're probably beginning to wonder, when is this 1/4-inch piece ever going to come to life? And here it is. So the first thing I did was just rough cut it. As you can see, and then I will double side tape it. I got to clean up the bottom of this, make sure it's perfectly flat. If you recall, I countersunk the T-nuts. You can see that's just some residual Dynamat sliding in and out of the car a million times. By the way, too, that is where I was going to do the light, if you remember, underneath. So this is where the fuse block mounts. And I had the light in here and then realized, man, I don't like that. So I pushed it further back, plugged that, didn't like that, and plugged that. So even though this is literally just a mock-up piece, I'm kind of a freak and still filled that in. So this again is the hole for the voltage gauge. I also did a dry run with my little pointy bolts just to see how this was going to work in terms of marking the piece, and that should work pretty good. But from here, I'm going to go ahead and, like I say, we'll get this double side tape, flush trim bit, and then start getting these holes going. Psych. You thought I was working on a 1/4 inch piece. One step forward, 2 steps back, folks. It happens to the best of us. So got the wood. It's been almost a week since I got the zebra wood. I had it resawn, so it was effectively, cut in half, and it warped on me bad. I have it drying in our bedroom now. My wife's more than happy about that, but it is what it is. And I think it's coming back, but if not, I'm going to have to take some drastic measures to try to steam it and heat it and do all kinds of stuff to bend it back. So I'm sure it can be fixed, but it set me back. So as a result of that, now I'm like terrified of the real piece warping when it's in the car. So if you recall, this is looking outside the trunk here. I've got the bolts that'll hold this front rail, one there, and they're threaded into the floor. And my original idea on this backside, so this would be where the back seat is, was to have a 90-degree lip coming off the piece that's going to go to the back seat. And this piece would just kind of slide underneath and tuck in place. But I'm afraid that what if I do all that and then the wood does warp again? Wood warps, if you're not aware, because of the differential between the sides, the moisture content. And when it dries, it cups and bends and does all that. So my thought is the following. I've got these bolts, they're kind of a furniture type bolt, and I'm going to go in and mount a bunch of these back here. I'm not going to go in and show all the details of what I'm doing here. It's effectively the same method that I've been using. I'll do the rivet nuts, or riv nuts, I think people call them, into the floor of the car very carefully, and then be able to countersink these and get those set up. I'm also, I think, going to do, I might do one here and I'll do another one here, but you'll see these two, but that's it. This will be covered up by my dad's little plaque I'm having made. And then these two you won't see because of where they're located in the trunk. But it just gives me a higher degree of assurance that I'm not going to have things heaving. So that was a bummer. Kind of bummed me out for a few days because those pieces of wood, if you saw them, just look incredible. I think those are definitely it. Also, just a quick update. I log all my hours. I'm at 800 hours on the build, and I hit 200 hours in the trunk, and here we are still looking at a piece of a template. Also, it is hot as heck out here in Arizona. It's 109 right now, and it's 7 o'clock at night. It's 109 in the garage. Dying, sweating, and that is my cooling over there, is that little fan. So not doing a whole lot, but something keeps pushing me. Something gets me out here and has me up late working on the car, and that is the chase for that sound that I heard almost 30 years ago. And I will get that sound, and when I turn this thing on and I hear that, it's going to all be worth it. So also, real quick, want to give a shout out to Joe Schmo from the Hood with the Audi TT. Let me turn the fan off, this thing is loud. My buddy Joe Schmo, you know who you are, has been watching my progress. He and I have a great relationship from the past, a true passion for sound, and I think I've always gotten along really good, and a mutual respect and friendship. He is a precision machinist and has been watching me, I think, struggle with some of the tools that I have. So he was nice enough to donate and send all of this stuff out to me. So I really, really appreciate it, Joe. Definitely some awesome tools. Some of these I need to learn how to use, but I certainly will do that and make sure that I do you proper with the tools. Also, by the way, there's that toolbox we talked about. Still holding strong, and I use the thing constantly. So I appreciate it. All right, guys. So at this point, again, what I'll do, let me get these bolts along the backside into the floor. I'll work on these other bolts. And then from there, I can go back to working on the 1/4-inch piece from my father. So thanks again for watching, and I'll give you an update here shortly. All right, at this point, I have done calling them the back bolts. You can see those, use that furniture style bolt. If anybody's gonna pick on me, the spacing is a little bit wonky because of where they bolt into the car. Just a second, I'll pull the floor out and you'll see that there are riv nuts into the body of the car, but there's some things that get in the way. So the spacing there is predicated on what I had to work with. And I think it's going to be real solid. So that back area, that should be 100%. I think this front area with this 1/8-inch steel rail bolted in, that, this thing is really, really solid. But what I am going to do is figure out where the seam is going to be. So again, there's going to be a seam going this way and another one going that way so there'll be like 4 pieces of zebra wood, and I'm going to put some additional bolts in. I don't know exactly where yet. That's the next thing I'll work on, and I'll show you what that looks like. And again, in just a second, I'll pull the floor out so you can see what those riv nuts look like underneath those bolts. All right, now I am getting a little old for this. I'm in the trunk. You can see that is kind of what those inserts look like. So I used a hole punch, a punch set, and basically cut the Dynamat out, drilled the holes in, painted the bare steel where it went, and then I did the inserts. So machine bolts effectively into the car, so really good integrity there. Also notice here I had to do a little surgery on the metal. This does not go to the outside of the car. This is kind of an internal ledge or tub, if you will. But I had to do that with a hole saw, and again, painted the metal and all that for the voltage gauge to fit, because it's like 2 inches deep. So, and you can see it's pretty cool. Here, this is going to be kind of like a little tray area where all the wiring is going to be able to go. So the car is really kind of built for it, and this again is just doing the same thing that Earl had in here. All right, so onward we go. Quick progress check here. So I'm building right angle brackets just out of 90-degree 1-inch aluminum, and I'll bolt those to the car. You can see I've got it level, really, really close. And then I'm going to do 2 more of those furniture bolts right here, because this is where the seam is going to be. You can see that's what the 4 pieces, 1, 2, 3, 4 of zebra wood will look like. And even though my dad's going to biscuit joint those, I just don't want any risk of heaving. So I got all 5 bolts back here, the 2 up front, 1, 2, 3, 4 on the seam. That's what I'm building the brackets for. And then in just a little bit, I think I'll do 1 more here, which will be countersunk and hidden underneath the bracket for the 845. So let's keep progressing. All right, as I mentioned, I'm working on some brackets. I just wanted to show the detail of once again, the machined inserts there, and also right there. So you'll see the brackets in just a minute. Definitely a long day so far. Started at 3, it's now 11. And it's still 92 degrees out. I think it was 112 earlier. So, all right. So have the pilot holes drilled for these 2 bolts and those 2 bolts. And I just want to show these brackets because they're going to effectively disappear. So aluminum brackets, and I had the floor in place, drilled through those 1/8-inch holes in the wood floor into those brackets. Notice the screw holes are not centered, but those brackets are centered because of the angle. You got to pick one, right? So, and I did machine inserts into there. Those screws are temporary. They're Phillips head. I'm gonna swap them out tomorrow for Allen head. Notice too, there's a little kind of a spacer there, 1/8 inch piece of aluminum, and on this side, I'm showing you guys this, but I was going to hide it. There's 3 pieces of aluminum, so the trunk is asymmetrical by 1/4 inch with this little tub. The rest of the trunk, well, obviously the spare is asymmetrical too, but everything else has been lining up. I know it's not me, I'm not off by 1/4 inch, but anyway, I'm going to dynamat over those brackets, drill those out. I'll put inserts into those brackets, the machine inserts, and then these holes will be opened up like these to accept those furniture bolts. So keep going. I'm going to quit for tonight, but I'll see you soon. Just want to show the detail real quick on this bracket. So again, you can see where I use all stainless steel hardware or aluminum. I've got rivet nuts holding these bolts in place, 1/4 bolts, and then rivet nuts here. And then these will be the bolts that go through the floor. So that should be very, very solid. I'm going to dynamite over all of this just because I don't really like the look of it. But that should be it for this part. One other quick thing, doing those brackets, I had to do obviously a bunch of drilling and milling of them. And in doing so, when you drill the holes, you get little burrs, but not with my new deburring tool. Thanks again, Joe Schmo. This thing is very handy. Where have you been all my life? Very helpful. Thank you very much. All right, changed my mind. Final answer, I took some Dotting tape and put it right up to the edge of the bracket to hide those little cleats. You guys know they're there. We'll keep it a secret. But the asymmetrical aspect of it, again, that's got 3 spacers. This one's got 1. That was driving me kind of crazy, but now if you look at them, everything looks good and even. And also, if I dynamited those, I may have had a problem with the floor not fitting properly. I went in, I didn't video this, but I took a piece of double-sided tape, removed the covering off one side, set it down on this piece face up so it's sticky on the top. I put the floor in, it was laying super flat, put the floor in and then pulled the floor out, and the tape was stuck to the floor. So I know it's basically touching, but it doesn't rock back and forth or anything like that. So that should be good. Now I got to drill out the holes in the floor, and then those mounts should be good. Another quick detail I want to show. If you notice, these countersinks, before somebody calls me out on it, are deeper than they need to be for these bolts. Here's why. They are. They're about, well, they're the thickness of these 2 washers. In the areas in the back of the car there, especially, there are some areas that I want to make sure that these aren't going to bottom out. So what I did is intentionally drill these out deeper than they needed to be so that the bolt would go in, 3/16 deeper, the thickness of these 2 washers. But because I'm a freak, and when I put all these bolts in right now for the final test fit, I don't want them sunk in too deep. So I'm adding a couple of washers to each so that they sit flush and represent where they will be for the final setup. Okay, here we are with all the bolts. So far, I'm going to do one more. I'll show you in a sec. So all the bolts are into the floor. When I put each bolt in, I torqued each one all the way down. That way I didn't rely on being able to jiggle the floor around to get everything to fit. But again, the heads of the bolts are exactly the same size as the holes, so there isn't any slop. Same is true here with the flathead screws. So came out really good, very, very solid. And again, just as a reminder, that there's going to be 4 pieces of zebra wood, 1, 2, 3, 4. So those bolts will basically be right at where the 2 pieces, kind of a long way, are seamed together. And then I'm going to do one more I can fit in here through the top, which will be countersunk underneath the shroud for the 845 display tube. So I'll do that one, and then I think I'm back to working on the pattern for my dad. Okay, at this point, I am good with the mounting bolts. I went a little crazy, but again, I did not want this thing to heave once all the work is done. So much time and effort going into this, and my father's doing the final zebra wood, so I do not, he's on the other side of the country. I don't want that to get jacked up. So I added one last bolt here, and this is the base for the 845, but because this is, I did a countersink here, and you can see where those are going to line up, so that'll hide it. There's no issue there, so you don't even know it's there. And once again, I did a threaded insert into the floor. So that should wrap up this video. Sorry it took so long, and but again, I look at it as if I can make it better, I will. I was really careful putting all these bolts in. There are 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 bolts holding that piece of wood into the floor with machine screws. So I don't think it's going to go anywhere, but it's all about making it as good as I can. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll post another video soon. Talk to you later.